Welcome to the Good Word, y'all. Vincent Goodwill here on Yahoo Sports. We are part of the Ball Don't Lie Network. Episode 10, the Eastern Conference and Western Conference Finals just started, and they're just about to end. It's almost like that Homer Simpson gif where he walks in the bar and comes right back out, grabs his hat. And with that, you see the face. Half man, half makeup, if you're seeing him on YouTube. My man, Jared Greenberg, NBA on TNT sideline reporter, NBA TV host. Jared, New Jersey's own. How you doing, man?
I'm just disappointed it took 10 episodes to get me on this podcast. I've been begging for years to make this happen. Vinny, this might be the greatest day of your life. Let's make it happen. Let's get it going.
If this is the greatest day of my life, Jared, I've got a real shitty life. Okay, let's just make that one clear here.
Well,
so Jared, which 3-0 series? Because that's where we are. Nuggets up 3-0. I am in LA because the Boston thought, hey, this LA thing is going to be pretty compelling. Wrong. Miami and Boston 3-0. So which one of these series surprises you the most, Jared Greenberg?
Oh, it's not even a question. It's Miami being up 3-0 because it's full of so many juicy storylines that are going to bleed right into the summer. It's unbelievable. Guys like you and me, when we're thinking about in July and August what to talk about. Oh, let's go back to Boston and Miami. This is fantastic. Number one, let's give credit to Miami. They have pulled the greatest rope-a-dope in the history of sports. The history. That includes any boxing metaphor or reference you want to get to. The greatest rope-a-dope ever. The fact that this team just cruised through the regular season saying, it doesn't matter. We've got these injuries. We're going to forget how to shoot. And all of a sudden, we're going to be able to become one of the great playoff shooting teams we've seen in recent memory in the playoffs. Then you get Boston, who had this chip on their shoulder trying to exact revenge over losing in the NBA Finals last year. And they've apparently forgotten how to play basketball. And in the fourth quarter, there's like some voodoo doll that hits them where like they don't even know how to dribble the ball in the fourth quarter. It's pretty remarkable that this flip has happened.
Well, last year, the same voodoo hit them in the NBA Finals. Remember, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum were just throwing the ball all over the place, dribbling the ball off of their foot, and you thought, okay, the stage is too big for them, right? That's what I was thinking. The stage is too big, and they will figure it out when they come back next year. They forgot to also compete. Like, that's what happened to me.
But remember, we had this whole thing with our friend Taylor Rooks did this great sit down with Jason Tatum where he revealed this injury that he didn't want to blame excuses on, which I'm with him, valid, whatever it is. It bled into portions of this season when he had some shooting slumps. We often wondered whether he would need surgery for it. He said, I don't even want to think about it. But now maybe it's not an injury. Maybe it's not a voodoo doll. Maybe it is that stage.
I think there is something broken with the Celtics. Completely broken, Jared.
And I'm with you, man. And I'm tempted to text people within that locker room, but right now might not be the right time, right? It's like when your friend breaks up with a girl.
Oh, yeah.
You want to be there for them, but you also don't want to be like, you don't want to find out exactly what's going wrong. You don't want to find out all the juicy stuff right away. You want to let it breathe for a little bit. Like, there is something in that locker room, and I think we saw it come to a head Friday night with the whole Grant Williams situation. We saw Joe Mazzulla be two different guys at the podium, one Friday night where he was deflecting blame on the execution of a game plan, to then Sunday night, 180. We've got a coach now saying, nope, players did nothing wrong. There's nothing they could have done wrong or even better to make us win. It was all on me. That sounded like a guy who may have gotten a talking to by somebody by saying, when you go up to the podium, there's a lot of people who are listening at this stage. Maybe don't blame everything on the players.
Well, here's the thing that I think comes into focus. Two things for me, Jared. Last year, they almost collapsed with Ime Udoka as their head coach. Remember that? They blew the game 7 or blew the game 6 at home to Miami. With
Jimmy Butler hits a shot, the Heat are in the NBA Finals.
Exactly. Jimmy Butler puts a little more leg. Remember, they had a big lead in the game 7 in the last 2 minutes. I think they were up 9. And then Miami just came roaring back. And if Jimmy puts a little more leg into that transition three-pointer, we are having a completely different conversation about that entire Boston Celtics season, let alone getting to the finals. So when you have the Udoka scandal, and then you bring in Joe Mazzulla, who wasn't even the top assistant, right?
He was behind the bench.
He was behind the bench, a young guy who clearly did not seem prepared to take on this job, right? It's not like he had been preparing to be a head coach and had been up for all these different jobs.
Well, I would argue with that. I'll push back on that. He had been preparing to be a head coach in his own mind. And there was a lot of people that I know that he had spoken to over the last couple of years, particularly last summer. One of those guys being Quinn Snyder, he spent some time with. His aspiration was to be a head coach. But nobody, even I think in his wildest dreams, would have thought it would happen this soon.
Yeah, that's my point. That's my point.
Right.
It wasn't like he was at the front of the line.
Correct.
For the next job. This was something that was completely unexpected. And then when the Celtics get off, to a better start than they did last year, and Joe Mazzulla's not taking timeouts. Oh, he's Phil Jackson. He's letting his guys work through it. He's letting them figure it out for themselves. And now you look at it when they need a coach, when they need someone to show some discipline, some order, to calm things down, he's standing over there looking clueless. So to me, it's not necessarily a failing of him right now, Jared. Maybe it's a failing of him being put in the position in the first place.
Well, I think we have to remember the chain of events.
Yeah.
Because, as you mentioned, Brad Stevens just didn't pick Joe Mazzulla out of a hat. There's a lot that went down in addition to the biggest thing that went down, which was the Ime Udoka scandal. Yep. Let's remember that job is probably going to Will Hardy.
Yeah.
Had he not taken the Utah Jazz job. Then you have a guy in Damon Stoudemire who's on the bench who, I don't know, I don't want to report things that I don't have on concrete ground, but I don't know if he wanted to be an NBA head coach. And then all of a sudden, midway through the season, he's out the door. And usually when we see guys take jobs in the middle of a season, or not, that's not usual, but like in the playoff run, they finish it out.
Right.
Damon Stoudemire took the Georgia Tech job and pieced out.
Yeah.
Right away. And I understand why. I don't blame him. Like, listen, in college, especially with what Georgia Tech has going on, not to get into too much of the weeds, he's got to hit the ground running with recruiting and all that stuff. I get it. But any sort of infrastructure that could have been there to make it a softer landing for Joe Mazzulla was out the door. There is very few guys around him in that coach's office that were there last year for a team that went to the NBA Finals. And remember, and I don't know how much they tried, but there was a lot of reporting done on the fact that maybe they'd get Jay Larranaga, who was a longtime assistant under Brad Stevens.
Yeah.
Back, who was on the Clipper bench.
Yeah.
Couldn't get that done with Jay. Jay said, no thanks, I'm staying with the Clippers. I think that there was a lot, and I think the Celtics will tell you, I would assume, I have not asked this, but I would assume they would tell you this was unprecedented circumstances. The timing of all of this sucked. And Joe got us off to this unbelievable start. He was the all-star head coach. We gave him a contract extension, which that's another storyline that I think is going to come into play here in the next couple of days or weeks, if not days. This is a fascinating story right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a number of things at play here. When you look at Jaylen Brown, and I think he's probably the number one on-floor storyline because he made All-NBA. He's eligible for the Supermax. A lot of people thought, oh, since he's eligible for the Supermax, that the Celtics can pay him an extra $40 million or whatever it is. That means the Celtics are going to keep him. I don't know, when you look at this roster, that keeping him with Jason Tatum is the best option. And also, let's be honest here. Jason Tatum, for what he did at the end of Game 6 against Philadelphia, and also what he did in Game 7 with that 50 ball, that guy's not showing up in this series. He hasn't. He had a better Game 2 than he did a Game 1, but he disappeared at the end of that game, Jared. Like, there seems to be something fundamentally wrong with the brew there. And we got to stop talking about the Celtics like they are this young team. Remember, they went to the conference finals in 17, in 18, not in 19. That was the Kyrie Irving year that Kyrie actually played. In 20, they were there in the bubble. And 21, they didn't get it. That was the year Milwaukee and Atlanta tussled. And then last year. So they've been in the conference finals with this core a number of years and got to the finals once. And yet they're still considered a young team.
Well, their two best players are 26 and 25.
Yeah, but they have the experience. They have more experience than your average.
Right. So you're saying from the standpoint of we can't brush it off as they're too young to do it. Right.
Yes.
My argument about them being young is there's still quite a bit of a runway if you want to build with these guys. That's what I would say. I get what you're saying, that we're beyond the point of saying that they're too young to win. No, you're right. They're 100% with the experience, with the talent, with the accolades that they've gotten. They should, especially in the circumstances, right? There was a perfect storm this year of the East was better, but all of a sudden the postseason crumbled around them. The Western Conference, listen, and we can get into I'm sure we'll get into the whole Denver thing. I want to give them their love and their flowers in a moment. Right. But this is a Boston team who midway through the year, when we're watching them in January and February, they're clearly the best team in basketball, and they're going to steamroll whoever they face in the Western Conference. So you're right in that. The one thing I will push back on you is this. I get like the financial. You
give me a whole lot of pushback on my podcast, damn it. You better watch your tone.
That's why you brought me on.
That is right. Yes. Go ahead.
You say culprit number one is Jaylen Brown. And the only reason why I think he may be culprit number one is because of the contract part of it. And I just want to add something here for our
I think he's more the most fascinating piece. I don't think he's the biggest culprit, the most fascinating piece. But go ahead.
Fascinating piece, right? That's I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah.
But I want to add this too, because I know people who are watching on YouTube or listening to this are really hardcore basketball fans. And I want to make something clear here about the Supermax. Just because you are eligible for it, and just because you want to re-sign with your team, there is no requirement from the team to offer you the Supermax, to go to the limit. Not to say they won't or they shouldn't or whatever, but just I want to make this extremely clear. The Celtics could offer a very handsome contract that is not technically the Supermax.
Right.
Right? Like the Supermax is just the ceiling of what they could offer.
Right.
It's not the floor. And just because you're eligible for it, and just because we've seen most players who are eligible get that doesn't mean the Celtics or any other team in this circumstance has to do that. That's number one. The other part of it, though, is I think we've got to go back to Jason Tatum. And I think for as much as I enjoy Jason Tatum as a person, genuinely, I think he's one of the nicer human beings in the NBA.
Yeah.
There's something up. And I wonder, like, if Jaylen Brown gets traded this summer because they can't come to an agreement on a contract, and that's what will happen, right? Like, if they can't sign him to whether it's the Supermax or something less than that, he will have to be traded this summer. They cannot. Right.
Nobody goes into free agency anymore. You get
Correct.
The trade happens the summer or the season before.
Correct.
Absolutely.
There will be all of the rumors that start that go back to what we had a year and a half ago, where it's Tatum and Brown can't win. I don't think it's that. I think there's something else in that locker room right now.
Absolutely. That locker room is broken.
It is absolutely. There is a rift. There is something. I don't know if it's maybe it's a lot of things. Maybe it's the coach. I'll say this. a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago. This was in the regular season. I asked a Celtics player about the relationship with Joe Mazzulla. And the only answer I got was, he's not Ime Udoka.
There's a million ways that we can dissect that particular statement. You're right. And the one thing is, those guys, to this day, I think the last time it was spoken about, they seem to say, man, we don't know why they fired Ime. Remember that? I think it might have been, is Marcus Smart or Jaylen Brown? One of those guys said it. Like, they hadn't talked to him. I think it was Jaylen Brown. And he said he missed him, but he hadn't talked to him or whatever. It just seemed really eerie and cryptic. And it just sounded like there was a disconnect between the players in the front office.
From ownership to Brad Stevens and everybody else in that office, in that circle, they wanted so badly for this story and the details of it not to get out.
Mm-hmm.
That they went as far, which I'm not saying whether it was right or wrong, but it's smart if you don't want to get it out to let any players or agents know, because that's how things leak out in this league. They leak out through players and their agents, mostly the agents. You know that.
Right.
You and I cover this league for a long time. And I think the players were taken aback a little bit, like, all right, I get it. Whether I agree or disagree is not the point, but can you give me a little respect to know why the guy who just took us to the NBA Finals and now we're the favorite to win it is not back? And again, I'm not on either side of this. I'm just telling you, I'm presenting what I think may be the start of what was
the disconnect
in that locker room.
Yeah, it's been a disjointed, ugly season. It's going to be an ugly finish because they gave up in game 3, and we got to give credit. We are well into this podcast, and we got to give credit to the Heat culture. I'm going to just run some numbers by you, right? They're just going to run some numbers by you. You ready for these numbers?
I don't do well with math.
I know. That's why I'm going to give them to you in an ABC setting. This is brought to you by the letter M, the letter V, the letter P, as in Jimmy Butler, MVP of the Eastern Conference Finals.
God. By the way, can we just, there should be like a disclaimer. Your producer, John, should put like on the screen right now in big letters, Vinny fanboy Goodwill for Jimmy Butler. Like right now, fanboy. Here we go. This is like you and all the former Chicago beat reporters. Like this is like your wet dream right now that this is going on.
Mind you that me and Jimmy Butler have this love-hate relationship.
Well, Jimmy has that with everybody. I'd imagine people in his family, Jimmy is like that with.
Trust me, that's probably true. But no.
I've been told the people Jimmy likes the most are the people Jimmy doesn't know.
No, that's not necessarily true. The people Jimmy likes the most are the people that you wouldn't think that Jimmy would like the most. I'll just say that. But here's the 3-point numbers. Are you ready for these? Duncan Robinson, 45%. Caleb Martin, 42%. Gabe Vincent, 38%. Max Strus, 37%. Kyle Lowry, dusting him off the grave, 37%. Kevin Love, 36%. Jimmy Butler, who doesn't shoot threes, all of a sudden now a 36% three-point shooter. If this were any other group, that looks like the Golden State Warriors numbers. That looks like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and or a better iteration of the Golden State Warriors, Jared Greenberg. But like you said,
you better be careful. Draymond's going to punch you out for that.
I'm going to let that one sit right there, Jared Greenberg. The one thing I will say, fight who wants to fight you. That's all been my only thing about that entire thing with Draymond Green. Fight who wants to fight you. And it was clear that Jordan Poole did not want to fight. That push, when we saw on the TMZ video, was not a push of an invitation. That was a push of a retreat. We all know the retreat push versus the invitation push. And that was one of a retreat. Now, back to the lecture at hand. If we're going to say that the 8th seeded Heat are going to the finals and that they're not your usual 8th seed, how great is this playoff run going to be? You knocked off the number 1 seed, the prohibitive favorite, the Milwaukee Bucks with Giannis. You beat the 50-win Knicks, but, you know, that's not your vintage Knicks team, but it's probably a vintage Knicks team.
What's your Twitter handle? Give it to the Knicks fans right now so they can get all over you. I love this. they can relax on me for a moment and get to you.
It's at Vince Goodwill. If Knicks fans want to come and bring some smoke, bring some smoke. Y'all,
you're not going to. It's not a retreat push from you.
Oh no, it's an invitation. It's
invitation push. Yeah,
it's bring it. So you beat the Bucks, you beat the Knicks, and right. You're about to knock off the Celtics in a clean sweep. That game last night says the Celtics is giving up. They're not going back to Boston. That's 1-2-3 Bora Bora, 1-2-3 Cancun. So when you spin it to this Miami team,
Al Horford already had his shirt on last night. Did you see it? Well, so right, I gotta push back on you here on something.
What's that?
Because this circles back to my rope-a-dope comment. So you bring up all these shooting numbers.
Duncan Robinson didn't play during the season. That ain't no rope-a-dope. He didn't play at all during the year.
You're making my point for me. Last year, last regular season, this was the best three-point shooting team in terms of percentage in the NBA.
Yeah.
With the same group of guys, sans PJ Tucker, they fell to 27th. And now they're just doing things that they were doing a year ago with the same group. That's the rope-a-dope. Like, they just decided, they either decided to take the regular season off, or they decided something, they could flip a switch in the postseason. And I did the first play-in game when they lost to Atlanta.
Yeah.
And they just didn't lose to Atlanta. They looked awful. They looked absolutely awful.
They looked terrible.
Right before that game, I spoke to Udonis Haslem in an off-camera conversation on the prospects of getting back to face Boston, his ultimate nemesis in the Eastern Conference, a team he has faced hundreds of times, the team that just knocked them out of his most recent shot to go out as a champion. And he wouldn't address just the Celtics aspect of it, but he said, Jared, regardless of what happened in the regular season, if this group gets in the playoffs, we're dangerous. And he said it with a smirk and a look that wasn't just this cliche speak that you hear from players saying, just get me to the playoffs. He didn't say it with the same tone that the Clippers were telling us all year, just get us to the playoffs, we'll be fine. There was something that he knew about this group. And the one thing I'll add that this group has that no other team in the NBA has, that I think we need to spend more time on, is Eric Spoelstra. And it's unfortunate for Joe Mazzulla here that he's taken the shrapnel for this, because it just so happens that Joe Mazzulla is the least experienced head coach in the NBA and the youngest, and Eric Spoelstra is one of the most experienced, and without question, I'll take him on you name any other guy. I need a game 7 coach. I'm taking Eric freaking Spoelstra.
Well, that brings me to a point. Eric Spoelstra and Ty Lue, to me, are the best 2 coaches in the game. They're the best game day, making adjustments on the fly.
Is Ty Lue allowed to coach?
Wow. Look at Jared Greenberg with more shots. Look, is the NBA TV platform limiting for you? Because it feels like here, and I know John Gennaro, our producer extraordinaire, is having an excellent time listening to Jared Greenberg just take all of these shots. Do you just feel limited by the NBA TV platform?
I love my job. I love the people I work with.
Shots off.
I appreciate my job.
Okay. Well, here's the thing. It's Spo. And yes, it's Jimmy Butler who has played his way into the Hall of Fame. Jimmy Butler, especially if you get to the finals, Jimmy Butler will be in the NBA, in the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. And it probably sounds weird for everybody to say this, for everybody to hear that. But it's the truth. The teams that have said no thanks to Jimmy Butler, Minnesota, Philly, Chicago, much worse spots, right? He had the Bulls in the playoffs every year when he was fully growing and coming into himself. He took the Timber Pups to the playoffs. And Philadelphia, their best chance at a championship, their absolute best chance at a championship was with Jimmy Butler and Joel Embiid as your 2 best players. And now that he's gone to Miami and he's found his coach kinship with Eric Spoelstra. And yeah, they've had some rocky moments because Jimmy Butler's an asshole. Like, there's no better way to put it. And I'll tell you a quick story. And you will appreciate this story. Remember Golden State? Remember they used to practice.
Are you allowed to call guys that without backing it up?
Call people an asshole?
Yeah. I'm not saying I agree or disagree. I'm just wondering, like, is that legal?
I don't know if it's like slander or libel or something like that.
But believe me, Jimmy's not suing you for this.
Not at all. Not at all. And trust me, I will say this to be clear for everybody or anybody who's listening to this podcast. There is nothing that I would not say on this platform that I wouldn't say directly in front of the person I'm talking to. I'm not one of those people that throws the rock and hides my hand. Okay? I'm not that dude. I'm from the east side of Detroit. Let's get that out the way. We don't raise no punks. All right.
Hey, producer John, this is now his 10th podcast. Has he mentioned that he's from Detroit in all 10? Has he checked the box in all 10?
John.
I don't know. I barely listen.
Dude, I've never hung out with you where you have not mentioned that you're from Detroit. Bro, I've known you for 10 years. I know where you're from.
You know me for longer than 10 years. And yes, I will wear Detroit on my sleeve. If I could wear a Detroit hat right now, I would, but I have good hair. Like you, Jared Greenberg. I'm
surprised you'd want to do that on this podcast.
We both have good hair. Except, two Americas. That's all. Just two Americas. Now, here's my Jimmy Butler story. Remember Golden State used to practice on top of the Oakland Marriott before they moved to San Francisco.
Biggest pain in the ass to get to.
Exactly. So the Bulls were going on some team excursion, and Jimmy Butler decided, I want to get shots up, right? And I was waiting on like my cab to go to the airport to go to the next stop. I wasn't hanging around San Francisco. I think I might have been going to LA or something. And me and Jimmy Butler had barely gotten to know each other. This was my first full season. So Jimmy walks up to me. He starts talking. And he says, this is the 2015-16 season. So this is Jimmy Butler one-time going on two-time All-Star. So he's just barely scratching the surface of what we have come to see over the last 7 or 8 years. So Jared, he says to me, if you got me, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard, who would you take? Now, mind you, I'm the beat writer. I'm the new guy.
And what year is this?
This is like November of 2015.
Okay.
So this is Paul George just coming back from that bad injury, but he looks like himself. This is Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard that looks like a grown man without the injuries, right?
Right.
And he says this. Now, I could go and play to the crowd and say, yeah, Jimmy, I would take you and hopefully earn some brownie points, right?
The answer is the correct answer is only Kawhi Leonard in 2015.
The correct answer that day, I said, Jimmy, I would take you third. I would take Kawhi first, Paul second, and you third. And he looked at me.
I love because he wasn't asking for an order. He said, "Who would you take?" And you went as far as laying it out.
Ain't no point being ambiguous about this, right? So the point is, I tell him that. He looks at me and he says, "I'm going to prove to you that you should take me first." So what does he do that year? And we can have.
You think the whole year was a mission to piss off Vin Goodwill?
Probably so. Probably so. So here's what he does that year. That year, he does this miraculous tip, like this tip layup over Paul George for a buzzer beater in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And then against San Antonio, Kawhi Leonard, in the final seconds, has a shot on Jimmy Butler to win a game. Butler blocks it. After each time, he looks at me and points at me. I shut what we call the hell up after those games. I said to him, hey, I would still take those dudes, but the gap is not as far as I thought it was. And come today, as of May 22nd, 2023, I'm taking Jimmy Butler first. I said that last year after Jimmy missed that shot against Boston in Game 7. I said I would still take him. I would take him first. I'm doubling down on that because that dude shows up in May, in June, and maybe the regular season doesn't mean as much to him, but he's an all-star in the regular season. I voted him all second team, and I think he wound up being all NBA second team. So it's not like he just takes the regular season off, but he turns into a different player, Jared.
Yeah.
When the weather gets warm. Like there's James Harden, right? James Harden is good from October to April. When the weather gets warm, his game goes down. Jimbo turns into Jim Jordan, Michael Jordan or something. You know what I mean? He turns into a different version of a super player, and now he's going to carry this team to the NBA Finals. And it looks like you give them a very good chance of winning this thing because they've got him.
He is a massive conundrum for the NBA.
Is he? For the NBA?
Yeah.
Or for you?
Both. All of the above.
Okay.
I think if you're on Park Avenue right now, you love what he's doing right now, no question. You love the drama, the theater, the attention he's bringing on and off the court, his comments. He doesn't do anything wrong. He doesn't do anything illegal. He's on center stage. He's performing with his mouth and with his play. But the NBA is going to an in-season tournament for a reason, because they're trying to create some interest. Like, I could tell you now, I would imagine Jimmy's already informed his representative, who we see in every picture, by the way, walking in and out of the arena. Bernie, you got any other clients you want to tend to this time of year? Any other clients that you want to hang out with? You want to make sure any of you guys are ready for the draft? Any of them? Like, Jimmy knows how to walk through a metal detector without you.
And Bernie, who's probably listening, will wind up reaching out to someone. You have to be the number one grade A jerk that I've had on this podcast.
Well, you're welcome. But my point is that I would imagine Jimmy's already informed people. Yeah, you can go take that in-season tournament and put it somewhere. Like, I'll be in the Bahamas or wherever Jimmy likes to vacation. I don't know what his cup of tea is. But the conundrum is this: like, if you're this good now, imagine what you could do for your legacy, for your stock, for your reputation, for your jersey sales, for your team's national TV appearances, for your organization, for your city, for the league as a whole, if you were to give this type of effort and concentration throughout the regular season. And now people will argue, Jared, it's about championships. He's playing it correctly. I think the NBA's biggest issue that they're facing right now is that priority number one is that they are not a sport. They are an entertainment company. And if we continue to mess around, because we saw this as a cause and effect after Kawhi Leonard won a championship, load managing his way through the 2019 season with the Raptors, that became the biggest storyline in the regular season in the years after, because teams felt like they could copy and paste that model with their stars, and it hadn't worked. And I'm not saying the Heat do not believe in the quote unquote load management that other teams do, but Jimmy takes games off. Jimmy I did a game in the regular season where Jimmy warmed up on the practice court at the Miami Heat arena, and all of a sudden decided his back hurt and did not play and left the arena. And it was like one of the weirdest things we had seen, because it was like, you hurt your back shooting? It's interesting. But like, why doesn't Jimmy do this in the regular season? I don't want to take away from what Jimmy's doing now. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, I think he's a conundrum for the NBA. And I think the people in Park Avenue have to be worried, just like they were when Kawhi Leonard won a title after load managing his way through that. Will other teams try to model, or not teams, but players use the mindset that Jimmy has?
I think that's a tough thing to say, because Jimmy will be 34 years old in September. So it's not like he's Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum, in the physical prime of his career that's doing this. And he's had injuries, especially towards the end of seasons in Chicago, in Miami. Miami, he was battling a knee. Remember that? In Chicago, and towards the end of those seasons where he was playing the heavy minutes. In Philadelphia, same thing. So I think it's a matter of making sure that you are reasonably fresh. I don't think it's something, I'm just taking a game off just to take a game off. You know what I mean? It could be some of that because Jimmy Butler is difficult to deal with, and sometimes it's not always a rhyme or a reason. But other organizations know better. They know they can't afford Jared to try something like this. Like there's a sweat equity that you need, and I think that's starting to show. Like the Miami Heat
Clippers
are an outlier.
Clippers is a perfect example.
Exactly. There's a sweat equity that you need throughout the course of 82 games. The Clippers aren't the best example of it. The Golden State Warriors are the best example of it, Jared. We are going to turn it on when we get full and we take the playoffs seriously. We're going to go on the road and win games. I think this playoff is showing the value of the regular season. And Jared, the last 6 weeks of this particular regular season showed we had games on every night, Jared. Every night it was on League Pass. Playoff positioning. Nobody was running away from everything.
It was some of the best regular season basketball we've had in a long time.
Yeah. So if it ain't broke, don't break it. That's my general premise on that. So I think there is a value towards the regular season, and I think honestly, and this is
Tell me right now. Mm-hmm. The in-season tournament starting next season.
Yes.
Will Jimmy Butler participate?
Well, it's not like an off-site thing. There's games that will be assigned as these games that are designated, so it'll just be baked into the schedule. I don't think
I'm glad you're explaining it for the listeners. I know this. Will Jimmy Butler participate in those games?
Yeah, why wouldn't he?
Okay.
Now, if I'm wrong, I'll be wrong, but I'm not betting that, just because it's designated as a play-in, as a, mid-season tournament game, that Jimmy will purposely miss it because of that. Now, if he winds up missing it for whatever reason, because he's Jimmy Butler, so be it. But I don't think because it is designated as something that he's going to give extra emphasis to be truant that day. I don't think he kicks it like that. Now, it's funny because after the break, Jared, after this break, we're going to talk about a team that we should have been paying a lot more attention to from the start of the season because they took the regular season seriously. And that, my friends, is the Denver
Memphis
Nuggets.
Grizzlies.
Welcome back to The Good Word with Goodwill. Jared Greenberg from NBA TV and the NBA on TNT. Jared is in Atlanta. I'm in sunny Los Angeles right now, or sunny-ish LA, where by the time you're hearing this, the Los Angeles Lakers could very well be swept out of the Western Conference Finals by the Denver Nuggets. And that, my friends, is proof that there is no script like the NBA script, because nobody could have written this. The Nuggets, Jared, have been the one team that has played with playoff-like concentration for 2.5 hours for the past month. 2.5 hours every other day over the past month. They've lost games, but Jared, they have taken a professional approach to this, and Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic look like they are unstoppable. And then you got Michael Porter Jr. just doing all the different things that nobody thought that he could do. This Nuggets team looks far and away like the most impressive team. They haven't had the most impressive run, but they looks like to be the most impressive team throughout this stage of the playoffs. Do you agree with that?
Oh, it's not even worth arguing. Yeah. And they took, and this is good. It's the other end of the spectrum here from the Miami Heat, where you've got a team that's going to be an 8 seed that's going to make the NBA Finals versus a team that was a 1 seed and was locked in all year. And we talk about a team with a chip on its shoulder. I mean, they just eat up. The worst thing that's going to happen to the Denver Nuggets is they win a championship. Next year, they're not going to have anything to complain about.
Michael Malone will still find it is like the greatest trick. He might be Kaiser Soze. You know what I mean? He might just be walking around, cripple, and then straighten that leg out because he has said, nobody believes in us. Nobody wants to talk to us. It's the weirdest thing, right?
But the other part of it too.
What's that?
I want to give love. I promise you, I'm going to give love to the Nuggets here. And I'm going to give love to Murray and Aaron Gordon, KCP, and Michael Porter Jr., and especially Nikola Jokic, who I think I don't even think it's a question right now. He's the best player in the game.
Yeah.
But part of what feeds this narrative that people love to say is that they've got a superstar who not only doesn't care about the accolades, the press, or what the good word is saying about him.
Cute.
Not only does he not care, he fights against it. The Nuggets have a really good organization. Like, it used to be Tim Conley, now it's Calvin Booth, who's doing a great job.
Great job.
Michael Malone is one of my favorite people in the NBA. I've got some great experiences in my life with Michael Malone, a fellow New York guy.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got a player who resists the attention. He is, and I don't know how much of a baseball guy you are, but he is the NBA's version of Mike Trout. Doesn't do the endorsements, doesn't do the extra media that he doesn't have to do. The team doesn't ask him to do other things because they know they won't. There is so many great human interest off the court basketball stories about this guy that have not been written or chronicled on television or on podcasts because he won't do it. And I think part of what helps Michael Malone feed all of this disrespect and the lack of attention that they get is the fact that the guy who we want to talk about doesn't want to talk to us.
So it's funny that you say that, and I wasn't trying to go here because it's going to sound like I'm saying something negative about the Nuggets.
Right, and I just want to make that very clear. I'm on the Nuggets bandwagon. I love them. I think they're going to win the championship this year. I think Jokic is right now not even questioned the best player in the NBA. But the reason why all of this is happening is because they've got a superstar who does not want the attention, who doesn't want it, who fights it.
Well, here's the thing. I believe that he wanted the MVP just as much as anybody else did. I don't think that he operates in some vacuum outside of everybody else. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting the MVP, but I do think, Jared, once the conversation got toxic, once we started talking about, once it got to the point of Kendrick Perkins saying, you know, the race element to it and everything else, I felt like Jokic backed completely off of going for it. He took his foot off the gas, Embiid went for it, and that's what happened. And the precedent of winning 3 straight MVPs and everything else, all the things that we said that Jokic hadn't done, they're now in the process of doing. They're having the great playoff run. They're going to get to the NBA Finals. They are completely healthy. Like this is a old school NBA team. It just doesn't look like it. And by old school team, this is what I mean. This is a team that we've watched grow together. This is a team, Jared, that we've watched go through heartbreak and have setbacks and injuries, and they just keep coming. And it doesn't seem like it because they haven't been whole, but they had that 7th game at home in 2019 against Portland where CJ McCollum put them out. And Jokic was on that team. Jamal Murray was on that team. Michael Porter Jr. was on that team. And they missed out on going to the Western Conference Finals by losing the 7th game at home. And then everything that happened after that, you know, everybody talks about the bubble, but I'll go back to 2019 because that was real heartbreak, real failure in a real NBA environment that wasn't, you know, something abnormal like the bubble was. Not taking anything away from the bubble, but it just was an abnormal setting. And then you had the injuries the last 2 years. So I look at them, Jared, as an old school built team that in the age of free agency and trades and, you know, instant grits and everything else, that team was percolating and simmering. And even though they had changed executives, they didn't change coaches. There, you know, you add in pieces like the Bruce Browns, like Aaron Gordon, like KCP. This was an expertly built team. And yet and still, we will have the nobody believed in us NBA Finals, Jared Greenberg.
Well, and I'm as guilty as anybody. I thought I was fooled into believing that the Warriors would be the team that would ultimately prevail. I was a team for a while who thought Kevin Durant and Devin Booker were just too much for anybody else to handle. I was a guy who thought, you know, because the Clippers kept on whispering in my ear, different people within that organization, that they had enough. And
they were whispering sweet nothings in your ear, Jared, and you were buying
just
it.
Get us to the playoffs.
Okay. Don't take much to sway you. Good grief. Have some pride.
I could be bought. Yeah, I could be bought. I think somebody in the for The Athletic wrote this story the other day, and I think it's so true about the value of patience. And I think it's what you're speaking to, and again, for as much as I hope people other organizations don't try and copy and paste, or other players don't try and copy and paste the mentality of what the Heat did, being 8 seed, kind of coast your way through the regular season and just think you could turn it on. I hope people understand the more practical way to build is through patience and understanding what parts fit around your core. And Michael Malone, there could have been a handful of times that he was fired. Would have been a very easy and understandable, Michael Malone could have been fired for way less than Mike Budenholzer, Nick Nurse, Doc Rivers, Monty Williams, those guys, without question. But they stuck with him.
Mm-hmm.
They stuck with Michael Porter Jr. through all of his back injuries. And there's no saying that those back injuries won't pop up again at some point.
Right.
They stuck through Jamal Murray, not only missing a season, but where most organizations would have encouraged him to play last postseason because he was cleared to get on the court. Probably there would have been a lot of organizations that would have put him in a position where he wasn't not just physically, but mentally ready to go.
Right.
And then the signings, understanding what Bruce Brown meant to the Nets the last couple of years, understanding where KCP could fit in while giving up a huge asset to them and a backup in Monty Morris, who meant so much to them. But yeah, I think that this organization has been built the right way. And I also think you talk about runways. This team could be real. I don't know how many championships they win, but I know for the next 4 years, we're going to be talking about the Denver Nuggets in contention.
Well, it's funny. They go from nobody believed in us to all of a sudden they're going to become the standard. And when I look at Jamal Murray, and I'm going to take people back, and I tweeted it, but I don't think I amplified it enough.
You pay for your tweets? Is that what you're talking about?
Absolutely the hell not.
Do you pay to get verified?
Hell no. Ain't no check by my name. I ain't giving. Boy, please. You must be out of your mind. Jamal Murray against the Lakers. Now, there's Bubble Murray and all that other type of stuff. No. He looks like May Murray and June Murray, right? He reminds me.
Is that your aunt?
You such an idiot.
May Murray?
You such an idiot. May, as in the month. Fool.
Oh, gotcha.
Clown. I'll tell you, John Gennaro is going to have a hell of a time editing this podcast because you are a downright idiot. I'll tell you. Folks,
what's he have to edit? This is gold. Just put it all out there.
Yeah, all of it.
Gold.
All of it. Jamal Murray reminds me, this is taking us back to the crates, Jared. Remember Mike Bibby that first year he's with Sacramento and they played the Lakers in the West Finals and he hit everything? There was nothing the Lakers could do with him. They put Kobe on him. He got torched. Derek Fisher got lunch meat. They had nothing from the Lakers, have nothing for Jamal Murray because he's hitting everything. Yes, you're playing a two-man game with Jokic and you can only shake the defense so much because you don't want Jokic to get off. But he's also making some tough shots. They tried putting 39-year-old LeBron James on him. I'm like, oh, there. Once I saw that in game 3, I said, this series is over. Everything is over for the Lakers and everything is over for, this particular series. So now, Jared, as we spin it to the Lakers, and they've got so many players out there who can't score. Vanderbilt is out there who was valuable enough in the Golden State series, can't score. D'Angelo Russell was certainly valuable in that series, can't score. Dennis Schroeder, I wasn't sure exactly who Steve Kerr was talking about when he said, the Lakers are flopping and everything else. But I think I found the culprit because Dennis Schroeder is just flopping all over the place, flopping on offense, flopping on defense, holding, grabbing, clutching, just a full-out hack. And now you've got LeBron and AD standing by themselves because they don't have the requisite help against a full-grown Nuggets team that is literally about to take them out. I'm not as surprised by this. I actually thought the Nuggets could win in 5. Now I'm hoping that they win in 4 so I can go see Janet Jackson in a couple of days. But when you look at the Lakers, is this a recipe for success? Do you go and change? because this series is over, Jared. Let's just be honest. They can win Game 4 tonight, Monday, and send it back because they haven't quit. The Celtics quit. The Lakers haven't quit. There's just been a realization in this series who the best team is. But when you look at how this team is built moving forward, Jared, do you say, okay, can we get this version of Anthony Davis next year? Can we get a reasonable version of a healthy LeBron James next year? And what do we do with D'Angelo Russell and Vanderbilt? And do we go get Kyrie Irving, or do we keep Rui Hachimura? You know what I mean? Like, hold on. There's a bunch of questions there, my man, and you know it.
First of all, you should have come to see Janet Jackson here in Atlanta. You know who she brought up on stage?
What, Ludacris?
Yeah. How'd you know?
I mean, it was public knowledge, but go ahead.
Gotcha.
What have you done for me lately? Sorry.
This is troubling. How old? Like you're not that old.
I'm not that old. So what's the point?
I don't know. So here's my question that Laker fans are going to hate, but I'm used to that already. Is what's happening to this Lakers more of an indictment on the Lakers or more of an indictment on Memphis and Golden State?
Yes. Yes. Well, with Memphis just choked on their own arrogance and immaturity.
Right, but if I'm John Morant, within putting everything else aside that I understand is out there, but just from a purely basketball 94-by-50 standpoint, John Morant's got to be looking at Jamal Murray being like, I'm better than that dude. How did I not do that?
I think if he believes that he is better, put it like this, yes, I agree with you to an extent. Okay, that's fine. I think Jamal Murray, when he says he's a lot better than people think, there's a few point guards in the league who I think are high off their own supply. Some might be closer to where you live, Jared, than others, that I would take Jamal Murray over. Okay? Yes. I don't know if John Morant would be one of them, but I think Memphis will look at it. To your point, Memphis will look at it and they can say, we didn't have Steven Adams. We didn't have Brandon Clark. We didn't have the bodies. And the Lakers bludgeoned us, especially on the glass. Yeah. Like, on top of the whole Dylan Brooks nonsense and everything else. Like, they literally were just left with Jaren Jackson Jr. and Xavier Tillman, who, while he played admirably, was a little bit over his head. With Golden State, they were broken from the start of the season when Draymond Green did what he did. They didn't have enough sweat equity and their legs were done. To me, that's the biggest thing. Steph's legs look done. Klay's legs look done. And it was clear to me by Game 4 how that series was going to go. Even if I was confident or I felt like Golden State was probably the better team, it was evident that the Lakers were going to win the series because they had to win the series. This one, the Lakers, while they have more answers for Denver has more counters for them. Yeah,
like I'm just going to say this.
There's just nothing that they can do. It's inevitable at this point.
I'm going to feed into the Michael Malone conversation here for a moment.
Here we go.
No, you know what it is? I don't think it is about the Lakers at this point. And we'll have plenty of months. And I'll just say this, like, I hope Rob Pelinka backs up what was the best in-season acquisitions probably of any GM. I think off the top of my head, best in-season acquisitions of any GM. And doesn't revert back to the Rob Pelinka who made these reckless decisions after the 2020 championship where he rebuilt a roster that just didn't make sense. Like the whole Kyrie Irving thing, we're going to hear 10 different ways from here through July that the Lakers want Kyrie, that they don't want Kyrie, that they're going to give him as much as he wants, that they're going to offer him just a one-year deal, that they don't want him, they do want him, they don't, they do, they don't, they do. Whatever. This is about the Denver Nuggets. This is about the best team in basketball going out there and taking care of business behind the best player in the NBA. Nikola Jokic, he doesn't need to score 50 every night to prove that he's the best player in the NBA. And oh, by the way, the conversations about him being such a liability, which mostly came out of Philadelphia, on the defensive end, he's fine. He's fine. There are way bigger liabilities on the defensive end in the NBA than Nikola Jokic.
there's a deficiency there, but you're right. Like, it might have been somewhat overplayed. He got in foul trouble in game 3 because of that, but he is putting forth more effort on defense now than he did during the regular season. Like, you can
Mike Malone was right about this. The fact that we made a big deal of like 6 possessions of Rui Hachimura in game 1, thinking that was going to be the answer. Like, I laughed at that a little bit. Like,
okay, here's what it is. Michael Malone and all of these guys, and this is no shot or no shade to anybody, but when they say nobody's paying attention to us, nobody writes anything about us, nobody says anything about us, they're only talking about ESPN. They're not talking about other national outlets that do great work, that focus on the Nuggets, that actually try to highlight the Nuggets, but the Nuggets won't let them be highlighted so they can play the nobody cares about us card. Yeah, I'm not buying into that. Like, whatever. But yeah, they're only talking about, to me, ESPN. And yeah, Jokic, the lack of defense thing was overplayed a little bit. And to the point about Embiid, it looks like Jokic at least don't scare. Jokic ain't disappearing in the fourth quarters of games. He may not always play well. He didn't play particularly well in the close of game 2. That was the Jamal Murray show. In game 3, Jokic came back after having early foul trouble and shook off the bad start and did what he needed to do to help close out game 3. At least, if nothing else, you know that Jokic is going to show up. And I don't need the triple-double numbers for him to say that. I can just watch the effect. Like, I purposely, Jared, don't watch the stat sheet when I'm watching him play. And I'm thinking, man, he's not having a good game. And you look up and it's halftime. He's got 16, 8, and 7. You know what I mean? Like, he just has a profound effect on the game. And the Nuggets are going to get all the attention that they claim that they don't want. They're going to get it over the next 3 weeks because the NBA Finals is 21 days and 7 games.
And if both of these end in a sweep, we've got about 10 days before game 1. They're not moving up the NBA Finals. Game 1
June 1st.
Is June 1st.
Yep.
And I tell you, Vinny, I've been starting to think about this too as I prepare. I will be going to games 1 and 2 of the NBA Finals, which as of now, it looks like it's in Denver. I've been thinking about this. The Nuggets are now taken out of the equation in terms of who does media, when they do media, and how much media they do.
That's a great point.
That now belongs to the esteemed office of Tim Frank, one of our great friends who does an amazing job. Tim, have I told you recently how great you are at your job? I am just honored to be in your presence. My point about all of this.
The head minion of all the minions, but go ahead.
My point of all this is Jokic is going to have to do a lot more talking than he's ever done before. And I don't presume that affects his game, but I just assume that may annoy him and tick him off because he can't say no.
Yeah, it's not in his hands anymore. It's going to be a very interesting 2 or 3 week period.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a fascinating finals. Like, I know, by the time next week we see this, maybe both series will be at 3-2, but I highly doubt that.
What series would you be least surprised if we totally eat our words about everything on this podcast and the team who's down 3-0 forces a game 7?
Forces a game 7?
Yeah.
I'd be least surprised by Boston.
Right.
I'd be least surprised by Boston.
And that's not, am I right in saying that's not because of the Lakers? That's how good we think the Nuggets are?
Yeah. I think the Nuggets have shown, I think since December 25th, they've been the number 1 team in the Western Conference. And we're paying attention to everybody else. Rightfully so, we're paying attention to everybody else. And before we go, Jared, right before we came on this morning, Carmelo Anthony released a video announcing his retirement. He hadn't played at all this year. The last season he played was with the Lakers. You're talking about 10 All-Star games. He's 11th all-time in points scored, 28,289 points behind Shaq. He never got a chance to play on a real championship level team. Part of that is of his own doing.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But the best team he played on was probably the 2009 Nuggets when they acquired Chauncey Billups for Allen Iverson.
Yep.
And Chauncey was the head of that snake. He was the leader of that team. And Carmelo was able to sort of follow suit and do what he did. And he never was able to recapture that magic. And think about it, he's in that 2003 draft class with LeBron James
Darko Milicic.
There you go. Thank you, Detroit Pistons, for that. I know you want to get that out there. His career would have been a whole lot different had he been drafted by Detroit. But he had made his own sort of steps along the way, forcing himself to the Knicks when the Knicks were not going to be a destination. The one player who honestly has shown that he wanted that stage of New York and put that on his back, and I think to some degree got unfairly maligned. But how will we remember Carmelo Anthony, aside from the guy who didn't get a ring?
Not to relitigate the history of Carmelo Anthony, but I think the biggest mistake that he made was forcing the Nuggets' hand into trading him mid-season and simply just not waiting till free agency to go to New York.
Well, there was circumstances behind that, because remember the lockout was coming after that.
I get it.
The lockout was coming, and he was worried about his money. So if the thing would have been to sign a shorter extension in 2006, as opposed to taking the longer money and you getting to unrestricted free agency sooner. If you want to litigate that, that's the mistake, not necessarily forcing the trade before the lockout, because I understood
No, because the point of it is he forced the Knicks
to give up a lot.
And this was terrible negotiations by probably ownership more than it was the front office, but they gave up 3/4 of their roster, including any core future they had to build around Carmelo. Whatever. I'll say this about Carmelo. I think he is the most underappreciated superstar of his generation.
Okay.
I think his ability to score from the different levels which he could score at was fascinating. It was unguardable. He is one of the great scorers of all time. You want to talk about his defense, you want to talk about his lack of assists, you want to talk about him hogging the basketball, fine. Those are all flaws in his game, no question. But the two things that stand out to me about Carmelo, one, his ability to score anytime, anywhere, against anyone. The other is, you talk about that New York pressure and how he not only stood up to it, but embraced it.
Yeah.
Carmelo never, ever ducked an interview in New York. After every game he was in that locker room, every shoot around, he made himself available. He was the king of New York for a period of time, who many people feel like he failed them. Yes, he didn't win a championship. Yes, he didn't go far enough in the playoffs. Yes, he had some issues in that locker room with some teammates. And I'm not discounting any of that. But I'm saying from a purely basketball standpoint, and a dude who didn't have too much of an ego to stand up there and say, it's on me, it's my bad, and would always talk into a microphone and a camera. I thought he was an incredibly great ambassador for this game. And then, not to mention, one of the great Olympians this game has ever seen.
Yeah.
Like, if we're going to give that credit to these international players, these Europeans or South Americans who built most of their resume on what they did on the world stage, why don't we offer that same acknowledgement and respect to our own guys? Who, Carmelo Anthony, he's one of the great scorers the Olympics, not the U.S. Olympics, that the Olympics has ever seen.
Olympic record, U.S. Olympic record, I think 39.
Yeah,
in one of those games, his game was built honestly for today's game, and had he played with the right point guard, had he played under the right coach, you felt like there was so much more room to grow for him to become a champion or greater than what he is, and really enter into those all-time conversations. But he is on the NBA's All-75 list. He was second in MVP voting in 2013. I want to say he got the one MVP vote that prevented LeBron from winning unanimously to be the first unanimous winner. Gary Washburn, my guy, was the one who did it, and I got no problem with him doing it. But Carmelo will be, like you said, one of the most underappreciated superstars of his time because he didn't have the jewelry. He'll wind up looking like Charles Barkley, Dominique Wilkins, joining that crop of guys who just never had the great team around him, never was able to go on a finals run where you got to see him in full bloom. And that's what makes all of this special, because you can have guys like that who do everything they can, everything in their power on the floor by and large, but still never get there. So we appreciate the guys who are doing it now. And we appreciate can't believe I'm saying this. We appreciate Jared Greenberg for joining us here.
Is this recorded? Is this part still recorded?
This is still recording, Jared Greenberg. Gotcha. I appreciate you joining us on the Good Word with Goodwill podcast.
You got my Venmo, right?
I hope to have you back. I'm not paying you. You will. My friend, I really appreciate you, brother. See you in Denver, I think, for the first couple of games of the finals, man.
Yeah, it's going to be like 3 months from now, but yeah, I'll see you there.
Hey, I need the break, and so do the rest of us. We'll just figure something out to do in the meantime, and I'll just go see Janet Jackson and have fun with that. I am Vince Goodwill. That is Jared S. Greenberg on Twitter, of course, NBA TV, NBA on TNT. Don't forget to, if you like this show, don't forget to rate us and review us. We're also on YouTube. Don't forget to look at us there. John Gennaro behind the glass. Evan and Ron also helping out with the videos. Don't forget, On the Clock with Kristen Peak this week, coming out with an episode all about Victor Wembanyama on Wednesday, and No Cap Room featuring Jake and Dan on Thursday. We will see you next Monday, maybe not next Monday, depending on if there's games still going on. If there is, then you'll see me on Memorial Day. If not, you'll see me right before Game 1 of the NBA Finals. Y'all be safe.
Can I come to your barbecue?
Hell no, you can't come to my damn barbecue. Out of your mind.